Shortly, I just sent him the link. Did you get in, Brett?
No. Yeah, it's
Looks
I
like,
believe Brett has joined us now.
yeah, looks like it.
Okay, I see Jeff Bowman, Dan Martin, Brittany. And then a phone number. Mr. Chairman, are you, you're calling in by telephone or do you have computer access?
both.
Okay. Well, we have a quorum if you're ready to start.
Yep, I'm ready to start. Let's go ahead and do roll call. Nick Hall, are you on the line?
Yes, just joined in.
Nick Hall's here. John Winnis is here. Ann Dunham's here. Rick Barrett, are you here? Jay Crystalman, are you here? Dan Folks here. Jeff Bauman's here. Greg Mace for NAU. He's stepping in for Andrew Icona. He's here. Ed Sterling with FHWA, you're here. Jeff Milback is here. Dave Wessel's here. Rose is here. Is there anybody else that I'm missing for roll call?
Mr. Chair, this is David Wessel, and we do have several guests that are here from ADOT and from Burgess and Nyepel to make presentations. I'm going to ask that they, I'll call out their names just to keep this straight, just to get them on the record. So from ADOT, we have Sage Donaldson. Are you here?
Yep, I'm here.
Great. And with her is Works Consulting. Do we have Jonathan Samuelson?
Hi guys, Jonathan Samuelson with Works Consulting.
And who's that guy? Adam somebody. Adam Langford, is that it? Adam,
Yeah.
are you there?
Hey, it's been a while since I've been up there in Flagstaff. Yeah, I'm here. Good to see you guys.
Hi, Adam. It's your old office mate from Mountain Line.
Yeah, Adam was our former Montoya fellow, or probably I think our first, if I remember right. And then from
I believe I was.
Burgess and Nyepel, Ravi Mbadapudi, are you there, Ravi?
Hey, Dave. Hi, guys.
Great. And then I see, I guess just for the record, I see did Brittany Hambrick, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm with Works Consulting.
Okay, Brittany, welcome. And
Thank you.
then I see Stephen Vidral from NAU. Stephen, are you there?
I am. Good afternoon.
Okay, welcome everybody. I think that is everybody on the participant list. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Do we have any public comment at this time? Hearing no public comment, we'll move on to item 1D, approval of minutes. Does anybody have any discussion on the minutes or a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Anne. I move to approve.
This is Nick, I second.
Okay, Anne made a motion to approve the minutes from August 28th. Nick seconded the motion. All in favor of approving the minutes from August 26th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds like it passes. Consent agenda. Moving on to item 2, consent agenda. There's no items on the consent agenda. So we'll move to item 3, general business. So 3A, Proposition 419 and 420 implementation plan. Jeff, this has you as presenting, and a recommendation. There is none. City staff will provide an update on the schedule for Proposition 419 and 420 project implementation phasing.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Brett Peterson is here with the City of Flagstaff, and I believe he's going to do an update. Brett, do you need something on screen sharing? It's all you, Brett. You're muted if you're talking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Are you able to see the PowerPoint slide titled Propositions 419, 420?
And 421, yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Brett Peterson. I'm the Capital Improvements Engineer for the City of Flagstaff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with all of you about the updates for Propositions 419 and 420. Some of you will recognize some of the slides of this PowerPoint slideshow presentation, as I took the information out of efforts that were primarily conducted by the MPO and city staff back in 2018. Today's presentation will focus on Propositions 419 and 420. With that, I will move to the next slide. It is not advancing. Well, all right. Rosie, I did send the PowerPoint presentation to you. Is it possible that you could pull it up?
Yes, give me just a moment.
Why don't I hear anything? Okay, it looks like you're on slide 2.
Is that where you would like me to be?
Yeah, so next slide, please. So Proposition 419 was an extension of the existing transportation tax. The money was defined to be used for road, bicycle, pedestrian projects, as well as general projects like traffic signals, street lighting, and signage. It was a flat renewal, meaning that we did not decrease the old rate, nor did we increase the old rate. The original tax was voted on and approved in 2000 and was set to expire in 2020. City staff and others decided at that point that in 2018 that we would go out before the voters in 2018 to see if we could get this tax extended. We were very fortunate that the citizens supported both propositions 419 and 420 and approved both. Prop 419 is extended through the year 2041. I believe the intent there was that because the renewal will occur in an even year, we wanted it to end in an odd year. So it's a 42.6 cent tax on a $100 purchase. And at the time that this PowerPoint presentation was put together, it was expected to generate $266 million over that 21-year period. Next slide. You can see here some of the major roadway networks. So there's roadway projects that included existing widening, the construction of new roadway sections, and some improvements along existing routes. So what's highlighted in turquoise, the solid line, is West Route 66 from Milton Avenue out to the west end of the city limits of Flagstaff. Existing Lone Tree Road between Butler Avenue, south down to John Wesley Powell. And then along Butler Avenue from essentially the undercrossing at I-40 out to Sonawa High School. The new roadway section primarily depicted here is improvements to existing JWP. So as you're all aware, John Wesley Powell Boulevard does not exist between Lake Mary Road and the airport. So that southern portion is the extension of JWP to the airport. And then from about the easterly boundary of Pine Canyon, we would pick up JWP and extend that road to the east, bending to the north, which is going to tie in at Butler Avenue. So this would be the 4th Street leg, and this would be the JWP leg. Next slide. Can you all see when I move my cursor over the slide, or is that not working for you?
Can't see it.
Can't see it.
I saw something there.
All right, so I will try to be very descriptive as we continue to move along, but I think these exhibits do a real good job of conveying the intent of the proposition and what types of projects we would be working on. There's an asterisk and a note there on the left-hand side of that slide that reads, the map shows only 36 of the 148 planned projects. For the complete list, go to. I don't know that link is still available, but I will be working to make sure that complete list is populated and accessible as we move forward. Some of the types of improvements included adding sidewalk where sidewalk did not exist, creating bike lanes along existing roadways, the addition of foot trail systems, and additional at-grade crossings, pedestrian crossings. Next slide. So Rosie, you might have to hit control and scroll and zoom in just a little bit on this one. I tried to make it as big as I could, but really what I want you to focus on, this is hot off the press. This is the capital improvement program, 5-year program. that defines the transportation and street-related improvements as we scroll across the top. So it defines last year's FY20 budget and the estimate expended. It defines in the narrower column, bound by the black lines, the FY21 budget, which is the budget season we're currently in. And then the remaining 4 years of the 5-year program, FY22, 23, 24, and 25, are all populated as we move forward. So Rosie, if you scroll back to the left-hand margin, you can see here we've got categories for highway user revenue funds as a funding source. The next heading down is transportation tax funded projects. Under the old tax, there were 4 different components. It was safety improvements, street improvements, 4th Street overpass, and the Flagstaff Urban Trails system. So that's how we used to define the pots of cash that would fund the various projects. And under each of those 4 categories, we had specific roadway sections or areas of town that we were focused on. That was all part of the old tax. And so what we did with our accountants was we wanted to document that through 2020 because that tax was very specific and included things like the 4th Street overpass. So we needed to make sure that money that was collected for the 4th Street corridor was spent on the 4th Street corridor. So that's why it was real important for us to stay focused on documenting where we were through the end of fiscal year 20, which ended last June. And then moving forward, if you'll scroll kind of back out to the bigger picture view for me, Rosie. And next slide. Before she clicks that, yeah, okay, that's good. So you can see where there was a bunch of empty space on the remaining 4 years of the 5-year program. Now that's populated with data. Whereas Rosie, if you'll highlight maybe just that section to the left under FY20, there's a bunch of dashes, which means that we kept track of it on the previous page, but now we're moving into the current tax dollars and how we anticipate spending those. So if you can zoom in for me, Rosie, on the column titled, yeah, the far left margin. So these are all streets and transportation related projects. And if you'll recall, in 2014, the road repair and street safety tax was approved. That included various components, including Pulliam Drive, pavement overlay money, and then utility replacements and overlay projects, which the Coconino Estates project is one that's currently underway. We anticipate that we will have all of those utility replacement and overlay projects completed by calendar year 2022. That's been a very nice program. It too was a 20-year tax. And the important part here was the first 7 years of that program included the utility replacements and overlay
because
component.
I'm calling in, but I have my phone on.
Are we good? Okay. So the first 7 years of that 20-year tax included utility replacements and overlay projects for which we will be wrapping those up, as I stated, in 2022. Moving beyond 2022, there's still 13 years of that program that will primarily supplement the line item for pavement overlays. So the annual chip seal and overlay projects that occur year after year after year are going to be in a real good spot. So happy to see where we're at with the road repair and street safety program. I think that's been a very successful tax. The next category down is the Lone Tree Overpass, which is the Proposition 420 item. We'll get to that here in just a minute. But then the next category of projects are roadway, pedestrian, bicycle, and safety improvements. And under that, there are new street projects, there are street widening projects, there are street operations projects, bicycle and pedestrian projects, and then we have a general improvements and partnership opportunities line item. What we've done is taken the input received from the Citizens Transportation Tax that was generated back in 2018 as to how this money should be divided up amongst those various categories. And myself and the traffic engineer, Jeff Bauman, have gone through and populated a 20-year program that defines what those improvements will look like. As an example, the Foots Sidewalk, Bicycle, and Ped line item, which is down there towards the bottom, kind of where your cursor is, Rosie. Maybe that's my cursor. Anyway, it's there, the $2 million line item. What we've decided is we would front load that particular category with $2 million a year for the first 7 years. And then it's about 1.1, just short of 1.1 million for each of the remaining years within that 20-year program. But we felt it was important to front load and provide enough funding early that we could get the ball rolling pretty significantly. So that's an example of how we populated this thing. The Citizens Transportation Tax Commission or committee was clear in the dollar value. So for the Foots program, it was $29 million over that 20-year period. So we've worked together to try to come up with that plan. That's consistent throughout. One thing I will point out, up a few rows, the project line item titled West Route 66 intersection truly does rely on a partnership with ADOT, as this tax provides the funding that would be necessary for certain components of the improvements along that corridor, but it doesn't include all of the money that we would need for all of the potential projects that may occur along West Route 66. I think we can go to the next slide. This one's an update on Proposition 420. This is a new tax. The money will be used for the construction of Lone Tree Overpass for the portion between Butler Avenue and Route 66. We have also identified that we can make some improvements to the roadway section south of Butler that will be included within the contract down to about Sawmill as we move forward with that particular project. So we can get in and get out, and we have good connectivity through all 4 legs of that intersection. The project will include trails, it'll include sidewalks, it'll include bike lanes. It was a tax in the amount of 23 cents on a $100 purchase and will last through for 20 years. Next slide. So a couple of the guiding documents that helped us define ultimately the Lone Tree Overpass were 2. There was a study that was completed by the City of Flagstaff back in 2006, defined as the Lone Tree Road Corridor Study. That's the one on the left. And it identified improvements between John Wesley Powell on the southern end, a grade separated crossing either under or over the interstate, improvements along existing Lone Tree up to Butler, and then the component between Butler and Route 66. We looked at that in pretty much those 5 different phases and felt it was important to move forward with the Lone Tree Overpass and get a better better understanding of exactly what that piece was going to look like, which is why in 2010 we completed the Lone Tree Overpass study. Next slide. So the railroad overpass is truly just that. We have to, very similar to what we did on 4th Street, we will be relocating the railroad tracks slightly to the south and dropping them several feet. We will be building a bridge between Butler Avenue and Route 66 that connects those two roadways to the system. We coordinated this project with the Rio de Flag project, which I'm really, really hopeful that in calendar year 2021, we will be moving forward with the construction of that lower reach project. The Lone Tree Overpass project is going to be a great addition to the network of roadways throughout the community, and we're really excited to continue to see that moving forward. Next slide. So this is an aerial image of that zoomed in section. So on the southern end of all of that, Rosie, would be Butler Avenue, running east-west or along the bottom of the page. And then you can see the alignment as we move forward with the overpass project. It does bisect some of the properties in that area, and we are working closely with the property owners in that area to make them whole. If it's a full take, such as the Arizona Materials site, it is a full take. We've been working with them, and they've been very receptive to, one, the idea of moving that plant, and two, being a good partner moving forward, recognizing that we anticipate that this road will be completed by November of 2026. We are currently requesting statements of qualifications as we search for a design build team. Those statements of qualifications are due tomorrow. After that, we will enter into our selection process. Once we select a design build team that we would prefer to move forward with, we will begin fee negotiations, and we anticipate that we'll be in front of council in December of this year. And again, we anticipate the promise that was made to the voters that this road will be open by November of 2026. Next slide. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions or I know I have several of these presentations coming up, so if I've missed the target, I'd like to hear that as well, and I can address whatever questions you may have.
Thank you, Brett. Are there any questions from the TAC or anybody else? Dave, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Brad, I was wondering if, or Rosie, if you could go back to slide 7, and for the major street projects like the Butler widening, Lone Tree, if you could highlight what, and let us know what years you hope to deliver at least those initial projects.
Sure. So Butler widening, we've currently populated $500,000 in the budget for that particular line item. And sorry, I'm bouncing between two different spreadsheets, so bear with me here.
Rosie, if you could go to the table of projects. I think it's one more slide back. There you go.
There you go. So exactly.
No, I think
So
you went back. You went one too many, Rosie. You need to go forward one. There you go.
There you go. So under street widening projects, the first project listed there is Butler Avenue widening. In the current fiscal year, we populated $500,000 so we can move forward with completing that design. And then for now, we have populated all of the rest of the money over that next remaining 4 years of the 5-year program for a grand total of including the current allocation, $7.8 million. So I will be very surprised if that road is not completed prior to 2025. We can always move money up if we need to. But at this point, we felt it was an improvement that was going to be necessary, especially with all of the development that's occurring out in that area and the contributions we've received from those developments, that we have our funding available and ready to move forward. 4th Street reconstruction is the next one on that list. We do anticipate, we just finished the design. We anticipate getting out, getting that project out on the streets to get bids. And I'm pushing really, really hard for us to start construction as early as March of 2021 for the remaining improvements along 4th Street. And those improvements include everything from the brand new bridge that's just about finished south to Sparrow. So it's about 2 blocks worth of improvements. We're feeling good about it. We were trying to sync those projects up so that it could be completed in one construction season, but it was the logistics of coordinating between those 2 projects was a little challenging. So we took the pedal off the gas. I think the bridge slide project, ADOT's project, is an absolutely awesome project. If you haven't been out there to take a look at it, you should. It's very close to being completed, and we're really looking forward to watching that corridor function completely differently than it ever has to date. So that's a good one. The Lone Tree Butler to Pine Knoll piece, we currently have what we currently have populated is 1.468. Yeah, and so that one's showing in FY24. And then the remainder of $12 million out in 2026. So we've got some flexibility there. To lump a largest amount of money of $12 million into one fiscal year is a little unrealistic. So we'll probably spread that out. But we didn't want to move that one beyond, like, say, the first third of this program. So we have the funding identified for those improvements. And then the next one.
Yeah, Brett, I think that was the major projects you have on that spreadsheet. So
okay,
I appreciate that. And just quickly, I think a short slide just showing, not in spreadsheet fashion, but in kind of bullet fashion, those projects would get to those questions real quickly for you. But that's good. I really appreciate the information.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a good point. I can certainly add that for the follow-up presentations.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. I have a question.
Real fast, Jeff. Anna has her hand up.
Great.
And then you'll be after it. And go ahead.
Thank you, Nate and Jeff, for holding on a moment. First off, Brett, thank you for a very clear presentation on the kind of the history of these funds and your planning for implementation. I think my couple of comments or questions are that I'm curious from Mountain Line's perspective is the partnership line item that you have. How do you, as city staff, you mentioned West Route 66 and needing to have a partnership with ADOT, and I would imagine you have a strategy to potentially work with them. But I'd be curious for this group, how you could see working with the other agencies, including Mountain Line, for taking advantage of partnership projects and what those might look like and how that might play out. So just from a process standpoint. So that's one question. The other comment I guess I have is the general scope for 419, I think, called up for some traffic signal work. I believe that's what it had in there on one of your points. Mountain Line is actually working on a strategic investment plan right now over the next 9 months. And one alignment I see with, as the city is upgrading and potentially doing signal upgrades and technology upgrades is to kind of work together. Because as you are well aware, we're studying potential transit signal priority, excuse me. So there could be a synergy, a partnership there when you're implementing traffic type of equipment into projects. So those were really my two points. And I'm wondering if you can address the partnership, the how of how you work with partners.
Sure, Ann. So thank you for that question. Yeah, so part of this process that we're entering into, and I was really excited when Jeff reached out and asked us to put this packet together for a handful of different groups, including this one. And really, for us, it's the Transportation Commission is going to have a huge role in helping us figure out what partnerships, how how we could incorporate strategic enhancements such as TSP into various programs, and/or if that's the right thing to do with this funding, et cetera. We have engaged with the Transportation Commission that we're going to have some real good conversations here coming up, and that's exactly the kind of feedback that we're hoping to get from that group. I believe my next presentation with them is October 7th. And at this point, it'll probably be a culmination of today's presentation and the refinements that we make over the next couple of weeks moving forward. But I really want to get them engaged in helping us define not only the priorities, but the timing of each of these efforts. And I think they're excited to do that. So I think both questions are essentially answered with that statement that we're going to engage with the Transportation Commission, and I think rely heavily on their input moving forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, Ann. Jeff, you want to go now?
Yeah, and briefly, I think Dave and Ann both hit on a couple of key points there. Brett, thank you for being here. The idea of this is that there can be coordination among the different MetroPlan member agencies because there are so many significant projects, and it being clear to all the different members what the city is doing when will be just really helpful. There might be opportunities for us to support the city. There might be opportunities for the projects to find some synergy with other projects member agencies might be able to do, and grants and grant funding leverage, which we'll talk about later in the meeting. And I would just say too, I think the spreadsheet, it's great. It's exactly the information I'm looking for. When you're going to do what and how much it's going to cost. It would be very helpful, I think, for the board of directors in particular when they review this to see it in more of the bulleted format, so it's easier for them to read. And thank you again for being here.
You bet. And I wish I could say that I could give you the link for the budget book, but I know the update I got from our finance team 2 weeks ago is that they were just getting ready to send to the printers, so that some of us can have our hard copies, but that the final document can be available online. I think we're within days of having that available, and as soon as it is available, I'll make sure you all have access to the entire book, as well as this content. But I'm told that this spreadsheet is what will be included within that final document. So thank you all for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Brett.
Hey, Nate.
Is there any other questions? Yes.
I'm sorry, this is Dan Folk. I didn't see an opportunity to put my hand up or anything. But the other side of our 5-year capital program obviously is the revenue side, not just the expenditures. And so it's very much a 5-year plan because we're projecting, right? We don't know what actual revenues will be. We had a report earlier in the week from the city manager, and it was just a very general comment, but in general, it said, I guess for this year, transportation tax, we're expecting to be about 2.1 million down from our projections. So obviously managing a 20-year program in 5-year increments, you know, revenues are going to fluctuate year to year. And so we have to be very, you know, we want to commit to a 5-year plan, but it depends on the revenues. I just always want to remind everyone of that. And obviously we know there's a lot of need. It's a 20-year program. It's not all going to get built in the first 5 years. And the need is great. So I just add that to the discussion.
Thanks for that, Dan. That's definitely something we're all being faced with right now. Any other questions for Brett or Dan on the proposed 419 and our proposition 419 and 420 implementation plan? All right, hearing none, let's move to item 3B, federal funding update. And Jeff Malbeck, you're going to be giving a briefing on this, and there's also no recommendations being made by staff.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to go through a PowerPoint presentation, actually, that should be hopefully pretty easy for everybody to follow. But first, and let me go ahead and get to share screen here so you can see what I'm looking at. This is a staff report that's in your packet titled Federal Funding Update. And really just to provide an update on many things that have happened. We do have a goal to secure at least $2.1 million as an organization, MetroPlan, money to pass through to member agencies within the next 5 years. And you might recall from our last meeting in the background, I shared some of the grants that we had been working on. The build grant, which unfortunately we learned that last week that we did not receive that grant for widening 4th Street. So that was, I think, the 5th year of applying for it. Also at the last meeting, we were absolutely scrambling in partnership with Mountain Line and the City of Flagstaff. And the idea was to apply for up to $19 million of funding for bicycle and pedestrian projects. I think as to give that some context, as you saw from Brett's presentation, there's a couple million a year at least that are budgeted towards the Foots Trail. So if that money can be leveraged against a significant federal grant, you know, it can maybe ease out any of the revenue shortfalls that Community Development Director Folk was just mentioning, and maybe even allow us to do a little bit more because it's a pretty significant funding source. And then federal stimulus funding. When I wrote the staff report, it wasn't this morning, and really just this morning, and I think in yesterday I learned it is definitely, it's looking like a continuing resolution. So I am not aware yet of any additional funding that's going to come through for federal stimulus as part of COVID relief. But of course, we're going to keep our eye on that, and we want to be poised to pursue that funding when it happens. I didn't put up here the technology grant, ATM CTD, but I will talk about that in the PowerPoint presentation. I think the main point I want to make here and discuss with this group, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but as we shared the report with the TAC last month and then with the management committee after that and then with the board, the feedback we got from everybody that kind of got distilled down is, you know, let's develop a formal process so we can have more clarity on which grants will be prioritized. Because the feeling has been, and I heard it from some members of this group too, it's like, look, we've only got a month or we've only got a few days, and you can't just come to us with a grant and expect us to be able to get approvals and document local match and everything in that amount of time. With big organizations, it's slower. So the PowerPoint presentation I'm about to share is going to go through how I believe we can do that. Okay, can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, I could see it, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it looks
Okay.
good.
Yep.
All right, here it comes in all its majesty. Okay, grant pursuit policy, and the whole point is to increase regional speed, clarity, and success with grant funding. I hope you're seeing the main screen. I notice I've got 3 different PowerPoint slides up here, so if anyone's having trouble with this view, please let me know. The next slide talks about the purpose, this whole idea of alignment and commitment and capacity. I mean, everything has to come together to be able to pursue grants, but then accept them and then actually build them. And then really want to address some challenges we've experienced with grant pursuit in the recent past and provide some solutions. So I always tie back to our strategic work plan, and we have a slightly ambitious vision with all of you to create the finest transportation system in the country. The mission, I feel like, it's more meaningful. It's something we can sink our teeth into, this leveraging cooperation, you know, maximizing financial and political resources, because clearly we can't build the finest transportation system without a lot of money and cooperation. And I think one of the things we've got in our guiding principles was, and these just came from this group really last January, our guiding principles, kind of how we are. We want to leverage project champions, and we want to write and secure competitive grants. So we also have this statement that I'd mentioned at the beginning, a specific goal to secure a certain amount of money. And I share all this just because it's a lot of basis for, this is why it's so important that MetroPlan stay on this and be successful for all of you in bringing in federal funding and doing it in a way that works for all of you. So what we've learned through, as I mentioned in the staff report, the BUILD grant and the 5339 is transit funding, and the advanced technology grant that we pursued over the past couple of months. We learned a lot from those things. We also had priority funding identified in June. So it said MetroPlan, you know, our board and this TAC, and everybody said, look, focus on bike and ped funding, focus on Lone Tree traffic interchange, and then work on advanced technology. So as we started to pursue a couple of those things, we heard some of the needs from the member agencies. And they were, look, we need a little more advance notice. We can't just jump on this stuff overnight. We all have some other stuff to do. So advance notice. And really, we need to budget match for these grants. I should change that to local match. And we need to be aware of impacts on staff. So if we get for example, if we bring in a grant for $1 million and then it creates more impacts on one of the member agency staff teams, but there's no funding in the grant to pay for additional staff, we haven't done anybody any favors. So we need to be clear on that. And then the approval process. Some things need to go to council, some things need to go perhaps to Director Halakowski, some things can maybe be approved at the department level. We want to understand that on the front end. I've got a few assumptions here that I've made in looking at this, and you know, one of them is that doing more local work at less local cost is good. And I just wanted to be clear about it because this grant of 80% leverage for bike and ped projects, and I put a pie chart here, $1 million of funds could be, if we could be matched again, we could get $4 million of federal funds for a total of a $5 million project. That's a lot of leverage. And the signal technology grant, Dave put a lot of time into and worked with all of you on, was about a 50% match. So 3 million local, 3 million federal for a $6 million project. But the other thing we also know is that federal funds often require increased costs. So we pretty much put a bow on the Lone Tree Railroad overpass low interest federal loan. Dave has been working on this for about a year with federal agencies and the Bureau, the Build America Bureau and folks at the city, and did all the math. And it basically says, we can't really justify borrowing money because it'll cost you more to do it and you might not save money in the long run because of environmental regulations and wages and overhead. And then with signal technology, we learned about some concerns for additional staffing and ongoing management, and those questions needed to be resolved. So federal funds require increased costs often. And also the local match needs to be documented. Now, I put a bullet here that is counter to what Brett just said. And Brett, maybe correct me if I missed it this time, but you know, cash flow, there's 30 million for bike and ped over 20 years. That doesn't necessarily mean there's 1.5 million every year. And I guess in this case, it's because it was front loaded and it's something like 2 million for the first 4 years. But it could be in reverse. So maybe a project doesn't have funding for 3 or 4 years down the road. We can't apply for a grant until the local match is available. So the main point, match needs to be budgeted. And then interagency coordination requires clarity and planning. And there's a lot of readiness that's required. And getting all of you together and everything you're all doing every day is busy, it's complicated, and being able to get focus and alignment on these grants, to be able to bring them in and manage them is just not a simple thing. So I don't want to underestimate the work that's involved in communication. So I'm identifying some things here that should get at resolving some of those main issues, like, is an organization in a leadership role or a support role? And if we're asking for match, is it cash match or is it in kind? You know, I think the onus is on us as MetroPlan to be very clear in our communication. So the challenge becomes gaining commitments from MetroPlan partner agencies at all required levels to pursue specific grants with confidence. And the approach is getting a policy or a practice for just annual approval so we know where the local match is, and then identify areas of flexibility, because sometimes opportunities just pop up. I mean, nobody predicted COVID, and then there's some funding came in, not for transportation, but for other things. So we also have to be agile, but agility and just flexibility can't be our fallback. I mean, really our first approach has to be with a lot of planning and thoughtfulness. So in this policy, also want to address some concerns that I've heard. And just to be really clear about it, staffing. If receiving a grant results in the need for more staff to manage and implement the grant, does the grant itself allow staff to be hired with the funding? If it doesn't, we have a problem. If it does, it could be good, it could be great. It could be even more staff than we had before. Similarly with maintenance. Our maintenance costs are going to be increased. Is there a funding source to sustain them, or can the grant sustain them? And similarly with facilities. If there's facilities costs, we need to know what those impacts will be in the immediate and in the long term. What are the impacts on the local agency? So I put together an approval worksheet and a checklist. And I don't know if you all can see this well enough on your screen. I can put it up in another format if you like. Let me ask, can anybody not see this?
It's small.
It's small?
Yeah, it's hard to read.
Yeah, the font's pretty small, Jeff.
All right, let me see if I can't, let me find a better format for doing it, okay? I don't know if anyone's able to see this.
Yeah, enlarge your screen there, Jeff. Go to full screen.
Yeah, I have. It's not highlighted in yellow, so I don't think it's working the way I want it to. Okay, Rosie's maybe going to come to the rescue. Just bear with me, please. Let me see if I can figure this out.
So open your PowerPoint again.
I just closed my PowerPoint.
Okay.
So I have it opened. Right here. So this, yeah, this should work.
Yeah, that should work. Okay. I'm just going to show you the PowerPoint trick. Yeah.
Okay, can you all see this Word document?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's much better, Jeff. That's very legible.
Great, thanks. I intended to put up a blank first, but I'm not going to mess with it. I put together a blank worksheet and then I populated one. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to run through this one that kind of has some sample data in it. Again, the grant purpose here, we want to leverage, we spell it out. You know, what are we doing here? Leveraging funds for signal synchronization technology in the city. We get clear on who will benefit and who will benefit indirectly and indicate all those member agencies. And then in the grant summary, just really some basic stuff. The description of the grant, the name of it, the funding agency, the program name, what the range is, the requested funding, so that's clear. And some important details like how much is the match, how much local are we looking for, what's the year of award, getting clear here on if there's an increase in cost because it's being federalized, and then really trying to show what is the net gain for the member agency. So basic information we could bring really to this group and say, hey, we want to pursue a grant in the coming year. Here's what it looks like. And it gives you something to sink your teeth into with some detail and in advance. The next thing is to get into some of these impacts that were already mentioned, staffing level impacts. And this is an assumption. I know Jeff Bowman's here, and I don't know if I got this right. I was just trying to come up with an example. But say the city needs at least one additional FTE. It costs 80 grand. And will the grant pay for staff costs? You know, if the answer is no, well, we probably have an issue. If the answer is yes, maybe we can keep going. Similarly with facility summary. And really it becomes like a budget request. What are some of these things that we're going to have to identify for facilities? Maybe there's additional operations costs. And then get clear on approvals. In this case, is it the city manager or the city council, or maybe the department director? Do other agencies get impacted and have to approve it? Does the MetroPlan board need to approve it? And then I tried to do this checklist of just kind of keep us down this flow. You know, is the grant consistent with the adopted work plan? And basically we're looking for mostly yeses in all of this stuff, right? Because if we get a no or a bunch of no's, it probably means the grant isn't right for us. So is there local match? If not, can the budget be amended? And you guys can probably read this for yourself. I don't need to go through it. The idea here, though, is to have a kind of a systematic, clear way of people being able to understand what we're pursuing and say whether they think it's a good idea or not, and understand what the impacts will be on them. And along these lines, Dave has come at this with his brain, a different direction, and has put together a flow chart that just kind of cracks this in a different way. Before I introduce Dave or ask Dave to put that up on the screen, I've been talking for a while and wonder if there's any questions or comments for me, Mr. Chairman. Okay, then I'm going to stop share. And Dave, are you ready to put your flow chart up?
Jeff, while he's doing that, I just want to say, I think it looks great. Brings a lot of logic to process conversations that partners often have when grants come up, but they're disorganized conversations, and this really puts a nice logical workflow to it.
Thanks, Ann.
I had my hand raised, but that's okay. It's hard to see it's in the list, but didn't want to jump on top of Nate.
Let me just check. Are you still with us, Nate? How about Nick? Nick Hall?
I'm still here.
Okay. I trust Nate will come back, but just in case, you're vice chair, so thanks for being on deck. Okay, I'm done. Dave, it's yours. And you're muted. Dave, you're muted.
I'm just going to go through this very quickly, and then we'll send it out as a handout for review. This is a 2-pager. Basically, we go through and see if there's policy support. If there is, we'll go ahead and do a rough scope cost and match, similar to what Jeff laid out in the presentation. Is it existing project? Yeah. If it's a tight schedule, then we probably won't go with this because we just don't have time to prepare. Do we have capacity for project management and grants? Do we have capacity for maintenance and operations? And if the answer is no, maybe we free up money as a result of capital. We free up money for maintenance and operations, and then we're clear to go for policy and staffing. Do a quick check on the CIP, amend it if necessary and if possible, and then kind of run through a partner check. If we have issues with the partners getting on board, maybe we need to wait. So now we go into our leveraging of, check the leveraging on how much we think we can actually leverage. And I'm going to share the next page, I believe. I thought I was. And this section just basically looks at the grant, looks at the situation. Are you a direct recipient? Is it a complex project? And then sets the level of increased cost that goes with federalization. And then you can calculate your leverage. And based on the math, if it's less than 1, maybe you have a project, you have some money, but you really just need to close the gap. You don't have any other way to do it. So even though it may not seem at first, that the federalization costs are not worth it, but if you're just closing the gap and bringing in money, maybe you go ahead. If there's a slightly better leverage, if it's greater than 2 to 1, yeah, you probably just want to go ahead and draft the grant. And if not, calculate those risks, whether you have high risk for overruns, high risk for lawsuits, if it's a controversial project. And if you have extra risks, perhaps you don't want to go with it. And it sounds like there's based on some of the things we heard, there's today in Jeff's presentation, maybe looking at that time frame as well. But this is just a first draft, and I think between the checklist and the flow chart, we can share that with the TAC and management committee and board and start getting feedback and really dial this in so that we're giving everybody the lead time and the confidence they need. So thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
I'm back here. I'm back now. My internet went out. Sorry.
Thank you,
guys hear
Mr.
me?
Chair. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So are we done with the federal funding update? Are there any questions or comments that anybody has? And your hand is still up. Do you have another question?
Actually, I I have a question, not a great presentation. Love the how of the process and the approach. I think it's a great start on this collaborative effort. My question was more about the build grant itself and the staff report. Sorry to hear the city didn't get their ask this last round, and anticipating another build grant maybe this winter, or not sure, but really wondering if that will be the first test for running this process. I know, Mountain Lion would love to see collaborative effort to resubmit on a project, or at least start preparing for one. We have a lot of projects that we could leverage. So anyway, just wanted to bring that up because it was in the staff report.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Jeff or Dave? All right, not seeing any. Let's move to item 3C, TIP amendment. The recommendation is staff recommends TAC approval to approve a TIP amendment moving $17,102 of STBG funds to the City of Flagstaff share of the 4th Street and Lockett Roundabout project. And Jeff, you were going to provide an update on that or an overview of that?
I am, and I'm going to stop sharing because I had an old report up there. I know we've been going long on the first two items on the agenda, and there's still quite a bit left, so I think I can be brief here. We presented last month. There was $17,102 that became available through HSIP funding and working with ADOT. The request was made from the City of Flagstaff that funding be put towards the cost overruns for the Schweitzer roundabout. And we looked into it. I think particularly Dave Wessel and Jeff Bowman, and have identified a way to do that. So we just need to amend the TIP if this group has basically already given us direction, and so is the board, to try to move the money in. To that purpose, we found a way to do it. So I think it just makes the most sense to ask this group to kind of ratify the decision and move this funding into the TIP for the Schweitzer Mesa roundabout, the city's share of cost of the Schweitzer Mesa roundabout project. Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Jeff. Is there any questions or discussion for Jeff or the City of Flagstaff on this TIP amendment moving the $17,000 to the Schweitzer Mesa roundabout project?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I had a quick question for Jeff.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm pretty sure this is just straightforward transfer of funds. It's HSIP $17,012 is what I had on the loan document. But is that Schweitzer also HSIP? I just don't recall.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that makes it a lot cleaner. I just, for some reason, I couldn't recall on the Schweitzer roundabout the funding. Okay. That's the only question I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion for this item? Okay, not hearing any. Is there anybody that would like to make a motion to recommend the $17,102 move into the TIP?
This is Jeff Bowman. Oh,
Go ahead, Jeff. You go, Jeff.
yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we modify the TIP to put $17,102 into the Schweitzer Turquoise Roundabout project in HSIP.
Yeah, I'd like to second with a small correction. Again, I've got the loan document in front of me and I have $17,012. So it'd be 17,012. That's what I believe is the correct amount. I don't have to maybe correct it later. So that's the amount I've got on the loan document. So if we can second
the
it
loan
with
document,
that correction.
17,012.
Right.
Okay, so we have a recommendation from Jeff Bauman to approve a tip amendment of $17,012 to the City of Flagstaff for the Schweitzer Mesa Roundabout project. Is there any other further discussion or anybody that wants to second that recommendation?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair, I seconded that with that correction made. Ms. Wennis.
Okay, John Wennis seconded the recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll
Mr.
move
Chair,
to,
can I ask a question about tip amendments before we jump to the next?
go ahead, Ann.
Kate Morley asked me to ask a question about 5305 grant funds. I believe she's communicating with Rosie about an existing 5305 item related to streetlight that she thought needed to be in a tip amendment. And she believes it would come through MetroPlan, but I'm not sure about that process. So that's first part of the question. Doesn't have to be answered, but I just wanted to put that out there that we may need to have a tip amendment for 5305. And in the future, does 5305 need to be on the regular tip for our transit 5-year plan that we're working on? So those are related to tip amendments that I just have process questions for MetroPlan.
Mr. Chair, this is Dave Wessel. May I respond quickly?
Go right ahead, Dave.
Yeah, so I just recently had the pleasure of reviewing the 265-page MPO COG manual draft, update of the draft manual, and the section referring to 5305E funds say that those may be included in the TIP. So that's a may, but they do need to be included in the work program. And so we will be working towards amending the work program to identify all 5305E funded projects. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep, thanks, Dave. All right, let's move forward to item 3D, $50,000 mini grants. And there's no recommendation from staff right now for TAC, but Jeff wants to discuss this with us. So go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the TAC, thank you. This was discussed by the TAC last month. It was near the end. The chairman asked me to bring it back for more discussion because I think the group was getting small by then. I continued on with this and the board has actually approved it. The management committee looked at it and then the board approved it last month. But I wanted to bring it back and just make clear if we go through this and, you know, people don't like it, we can always consider amending it. But the point of it was to send some money back to the member agencies from MetroPlan funding. We considered it, and this came out of the strategic advance that was last January. There was some interest in having these small. So we put together a mini grant proposal. And as you can see, as I scroll down, I believe we've got the attachment here that's very simple. And it's to support member agencies. The eligibility is a MetroPlan member agency. We're looking under criteria for projects that are timely, that they're multimodal, that we leverage, and that they're, you know, pretty much ready to do. We don't have to deal with environmental clearances. We wanted to make an exception, or, you know, make it possible for HERF exchange to happen. That would reduce the amount of funding by 10%. And then the idea is we get the applications in, open it up in October, and we award the grant in December. So keeping it pretty simple, just a couple of pages, and, you know, maybe there's a crosswalk or a bus stop or a street light or any number of things that organizations need a little more money on. I will tell you, we considered opening this up to the community. to be able to apply, and it just didn't seem right. It risked putting a community group really kind of at odds with, or giving them money to pressure a member agency, and talked that through at the last couple of meetings and just didn't seem right. So it was adopted just for member agencies. And the last thing I'll say is I got feedback after the last TAC meeting. The city manager Clifton made this point. It's like, yeah, we always want additional money and it's great to have grants, and they can also become a lot of work. So we have to be careful we set this up in such a way that the money flows easily and it's not more trouble than it's worth. So that's certainly the intention. And unless there are objections with this, we're set up to get the process going next month and award some funding for projects in December. Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, moving to the next. Are there any questions for Jeff before we move to the next, or discussion before we move to the next?
Hey, Nate, this is Dan.
Dan, yep, Dan, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Jeff, so much for putting this together. I know I've been a proponent of this approach and trying to do some small type projects. And so I totally agree with your approach. I think we've seen this before. I guess my question is, moving forward, are you looking for projects still here in the last week? Or is this carrying over into next year? Are we thinking of, because I don't know if anyone has submitted anything. I don't think we have on the city side. You know, my idea with this was really things where multi-jurisdictional projects, right? Maybe something on an ADOT roadway that involves a mountain line stop and a place where we get requests for things. That's really what I was thinking, is things we could all partner on. I don't know if anyone submitted anything or not. I guess maybe that's the first thing I should ask.
Sure. I appreciate the question. I haven't opened it yet. It's scheduled to open on October 1st, so next week. And it'll be open for a month, and we'll make decisions in December on where the funding goes.
Okay, good. I was just reading your thing and it looked like it was going to open and close like September 30th next week. So I didn't know, but so it will be open during October. Just at the bottom of your guidelines, it said to submit by September 30th.
Thank you. I'll correct that.
So that's October.
Yes, that should be October 30th.
Excellent. Thank you. So yeah, we will definitely, I'll engage our team and see if we have any projects and talk with our partners and see if we can maybe come up with something that we can all work on together. I think that would be great.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, just a note to everybody. The ADOT 5-year construction program is out. The draft is out. And as I understand it, there will be $15 million available for HERF exchange. So the ability to pay that 10% surcharge and do a local project. Of course, you have to comply with HERF guidelines in that case, but wanted to bring that to people's attention.
Thank you, Dave.
Actually, can I ask a question now? Dave's comment triggered a question about the match. So I was reading it's a 50% match on the 50,000. You know, again, going back to process where agencies may obviously didn't, this is a great surprise to, you know, see a possibility of a grant. Probably most agencies don't necessarily have the match in their back pocket, or if they did, they'd have to do a little bit of offline budget shifting. Can you use other source? Does it have to be local dollars that match? And I don't even know if that would work within the federal grant. Like if we had a federal grant for something else, could we use a portion of that to match this? just asking what you're meaning by match.
Mr. Chairman, and generally, no, I don't think you could. We're using federal funds, passing them through, so federal funds can't be used to match them. Simplest terms, if there's local funding for a project or state funding, it could be used that way. So it would be 50% of local. Dave, or perhaps John Wennis, I would like some clarification. If it is a HERF exchange, how does that impact, if at all, the local match requirement?
This is Dave. Jeff, I would think you would probably end up with a $90,000 project. You do, $50,000 of STBG, do the 10% surcharge. So that's $45,000. So then $45,000 local match, you end up with a $90,000 project, would be my recommendation.
So the answer to Ann's question would be yes, federal funding could be used to match it if we ran this through the HERF exchange, but the amount would be 40,000 instead of 50,000
45,000.
on each side.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So 90% exchange rate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add to that. Thanks, Dave.
This is Ed Stillings. When you do a HERF swap, it's not federal funds anymore. So,
Yeah. And I think the point is that you could take our $50,000 in STBG, throw in, 50,000 in 5307 funds if it's NAPTA, and then do a HERF exchange for all of that federal money for $90,000 and do a local project. I think is the approach.
Okay, I see. Yeah. Yeah, it just doesn't carry the federal. ADOT keeps the federal funds, so.
Thanks, Ed. So I think that's it, Mr. Chairman, on that item.
All right. Let's move to the next one then. Item 3E, Regional Transportation Plan Update. There's no recommendation. And Dave, you're going to run us through the update.
Yes, just very quickly, we've worked through the scope. We want to release this $250,000 effort probably next month. A couple late breaking items after working with Mountain Lion a little bit more on their scope. We think it's sufficiently smaller and different enough. We mutually agree that we should go our separate ways on procurement. We may still contract with Mountain Lion to do the procurement, but we won't combine the projects. Also, there's been, as Dan Folk mentioned, there's some kind of breaking news on the budget front for the city and county. We're looking to coordinate with the city and county regional plan update, and depending on as we learn more about that funding and the funding prospects for that, we may make some minor adjustments to the scope to make sure that the coordination is as clean as possible based on our budget information. But we still anticipate going out in next month, putting a committee together and hopefully making an award in December. So that's my update. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave on the regional transportation plan update or discussion?
I guess I'll just ask Dave.
I'm not seeing any hands.
Sorry, this is Dan again. I think we're meeting this week, aren't we? Or next week? Just we can coordinate our city regional plan update with the RTP, but
yeah, Mr. Chair, Dan, Mr. Folk. My understanding from Sarah Dector
call me
is
Dan.
I can call you Dan.
Go by Dan.
Okay.
Yeah, you can call me
Dan. All right. You can call me Dave. You can call me Dave. That state this in terms of the overall budget scenario, I guess Monday night the city and county learned or was presented that the state may not be picking up the cost of some items and passing those through to the city and county, and so the prospects for funding for the regional plan this coming fiscal year may be in question, and if we can get that dialed in, if it's gonna move forward, great, and we'll coordinate one way, and if it's going to be postponed a year, we'll coordinate another way. And so we just want to get a handle on that before we release the RFP for the regional transportation plan.
Yeah, no, that's good that we're going to sit down with Sarah then and talk about it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, any other questions or discussion for that item? If not, let's move forward to item 3F, Regional Transportation Model Update.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm going to be very brief with my introduction. We've been working diligently with Burgess and Nyepel on the regional transportation model update. Ravi is with us, and he's going to share a presentation giving an overview of the model update. And next month, we want to, or actually, our next meeting is going to be November 18th, I believe. We want to come back with a fully calibrated model, present that to the TAC, and get endorsement of that model for a variety of uses. We've done this in the past. So for long-range transportation planning, corridor planning, transportation impact analysis, and such. And so today is just an overview of where we're at, what we're doing to change the model and update the model, improve the model, and where we're at in the process. So with that, I'll introduce Ravi Ambadapudi. Ravi?
All right, thanks, Dave. Let me share my screen here. Are you able to see my PowerPoint, folks?
Yes.
All right. So hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is Ravi Ambadapudi. I'm the project manager for this travel demand model project. My intention today is to provide a very high-level overview of what is in the new travel demand model for the Flagstaff region, and touch upon some data needs and the functionality. So just to provide some background and context, the previous model was initially developed somewhere between 2005 and 2010, and since then it went through a series of updates and recalibration efforts. The core model functionality largely remained the same throughout this time period, in which the land use data and trip rates from the trip generation manual were used as a basis for trip generation, and mode splits were used to assign trips to different modes of transportation like auto, transit, and bike. Around 2015, there was like a significant addition to the model structure. It's called the 3D model that considers features like intersection density, intersection design, and diversity to largely take into consideration the influence of built environment on vehicular trips. Again, like to put this into perspective, this is a mechanism to influence more choice for short trips, for instance. Short trips will be completed by walk or bike, for instance. That's the mechanism for that. So like fast forward to 2018, and with the increasing need to investigate a variety of what-if planning scenarios, the model needed significant enhancements to accurately model transit and other modes of transportation. So with that brief background, let's take a look at some of the updates for this project. So let me go to slideshow here. So for some reason it's blocking. Okay, I'm not going to use slideshow. It's Zoom is doing some quirky things here. So from the model structure itself, I mean, it's a typical 4-step model. It's still a 4-step model with several enhancements and added functionalities. The 4 steps are trip generation, like how many trips are being generated by every traffic analysis zone, trip distribution, where they're going, and mode choices, basically which mode of like auto, transit, bike, or walk is being used to complete the trip. And finally, the trip assignment is basically which identifies a path. Of these 4 different steps, the mode choice is a completely new module. And several major functionality improvements are included in the other 3 steps. So going to the model revisions, there are several model updates. The new model has a task system that is better aligned with the census blocks. And it has better loading points, wherein like the tasks, the driveways are identified, and the model loads traffic volume onto the driveways and eventually onto the street network. Previously, there were around 380 zones in the model, and the new model has about 410 zones with refined boundaries. The road network is integrated with the city GIS model. We retained a unique identifier in the city GIS model.
Maybe we even just stay in the slide.
Please mute your phones, please.
Okay, sorry. We retained a unique identifier in the city GIS model in Transcat road network so that the network and assignment information can be easily exchanged between the two models in the future. For instance, after the travel demand model is run, you would have ADT and time of the day traffic volumes that you would want to load onto GIS, which can be eventually used for mapping purposes or pavement management functionalities or something else. On a similar note, if you have some elements in GIS, it can be imported into the Transcat travel demand model environment. So we were cognizant of this fact that, I mean, there is a need to maintain these two models separately and benefits to maintaining the one-to-one exchange of data. So the model also includes the foods trail system completely integrated into the new model structure. This is new. It was not in there before. And it supports auto transit, truck, and bike assignments. Moving on to the next slide. Going into through the core functionalities of the model. So it uses what is called like a hybrid trip generation methodology. So the trip generation module has two components. Trips are produced somewhere and trips are attracted to some place. In the context of daily trip making, I mean, you're leaving your house, that's a trip production. And you're getting to work, that's a trip attraction. So that's a home-based work trip. So the productions in the new model are derived from what is called a cross-classification based approach, and the attractions are derived from a land use based approach, and hence it's a hybrid approach, right? So the trip purposes include home-based work, home-based university, home-based shop, home-based other, which is like a catch-all for like going out for meals, entertainment, you know, I mean, like all of the trip purposes, it's a catch-all. And then there is like something called non-home-based trip purpose. And a new addition to the new model is the home-based school trip purpose. This again benefits the area with like time of the day analysis, where like some areas can see a high volume of trips, maybe around like 3 p.m. The previous model has only like a PM peak hour model. So some of this nuances could be lost if you do not include this kind of resolution in there. And the trip generation also includes what is called a household disaggregation model, which essentially identifies the number of households within a TAZ or a zone and classifies them by household size and income category. Once again, to put this into perspective, if lack of trip market segmentation, like besides trip purpose, it can lead to incorrect forecasts during the trip distribution process. Like for instance, persons of restricted mobility, like low income, zero car households, for example, they exhibit on average shorter trip lengths than other persons. Low income workers are more likely to be employed in retail and service occupations, while high income workers can be more often employed in like professional services. Without appropriate trip market segmentation based on cross-classification data that take into account household size, income characteristics, auto ownership characteristics, the trip distribution model will be unable to link the right workers to the right jobs. So failing to reproduce trip market patterns can be particularly severe on mode choice, and oftentimes it's simply impossible to calibrate logical and representative mode-specific constants like transit ridership. So we took into consideration mode choice throughout the process. We want to effectively reproduce transit ridership, effectively reproduce bike, walk modes of transportation. You know, short trips are critical. People, low-income categories, and zero auto ownership households, it's very critical to replicate this behavior. Hence, the cross-classification and the household disaggregation model come into play. And on trip distribution, which is basically how trips are distributed through the network. So if there is like home-based shop trip purpose, there could be multiple competing destinations. One on the east side of Flagstaff in the mall area, one could be near NAU area. So which area is like is more attractive? So this is like a destination choice, right? So the previous construct used what is called like a gravity model. So the gravity analogy, it works for trip distribution in what we call as like monocentric urban regions where accessibility to transit plays little to no choice in destination. So this is no longer the case in some areas like Flagstaff, where there'll be more than one dominant attraction. So multiple and important suburban to suburban trip flows, and where there is interest in understanding the contribution of transit towards achieving more sustainable urban development patterns. So the gravity model, I mean, has a lot of like inherent deficiencies. It exhibits incorrect demand elasticities. In particular, the model may respond illogically to changes in levels of service, like for instance, improved accessibility to a given destination may cause a disproportionate increase in total trips. So both results are undesirable and may lead to like erroneous assessment of impact of transit or highway improvements, for instance.
Robbie?
So this, okay.
Robbie, this is Dave. I'm going to ask in the interest of time, we do have another presentation following yours.
Okay.
I think you've given an excellent overview of how models work, and if we can proceed through the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
So other improvements to the model are like transit. It's a new component. 3D model is like something that I touched upon. We've fully integrated that into mode choice. Truck assignment is completely new. And inputs to the model are socioeconomic data sets. This is like readily available data sets from census and ACS estimates. We've parsed this and included in the cross-classification mechanism. And this is another like example of like how the household size disaggregation model works. For every TAZ, we identify the average household size. So for instance, if there's like a TAZ with 1.5 person household average size, then it gets disaggregated into like how many households are 1 person households, how many persons are 2 person, 3 person, and 4 person households in that TAZ. And then we overlay income distribution on that. We have 5 separate income tiles. So low income to high income categories. So for household size 1, what percentage is in low income category? Household size 4, what percentage is in low income category? So we overlay all of this information, and obviously this feeds into the transit side of it, this feeds into the auto side of it, and the entire trip distribution process. And trip rates are cross-classified, and they are derived from the 2018 Flagstaff Trip Diary Survey. And the attraction rates are derived from the land use side of it. We use the AZDOR database to completely update the land use within the model, and use IT rates to come up with attraction rates. So moving on to what's in the roadway network, the red lines on the screen, they are like the Foots trail system. It includes all median breaks, it includes future roadway network, and it completely enables non-motorized trip assignment. The transit network, this is a totally new feature. It includes NAPTA routes, all routes. It includes all the bus stops, includes NAU shuttle routes through the campus, and headways are modeled based on schedule. So the model can be used to see like if service rates are adjusted, what's the impact on ridership. So that's one way to use the model going forward. So on top of all of this, there is a model interface update. This is a completely new interface. It has a scenario manager, model manager, and output manager. It can be used to analyze like mode choice summaries, performance metrics, or changes to your planning policies and things like that. As of today, the model performance, I mean, we are going through the calibration process right now. So what we have is an overall RMSE percentage of 18.7%. These models, they perform really well on high functional classification roads. So freeways, we are seeing about 5.4% error RMSE. and some of these arterial roads, they are around like 19%. So to put it into perspective, like Phoenix, an area which we are actively calibrating as well, has an overall RMSE of 24%. So the lower this value, the better the model is, and it can be used for a wide variety of scenario analysis and planning analysis. So as a comparison, other regions in the country, Ann Arbor, which is also a college town, has about 34% RMSE. Some of these larger like areas like tourist areas like Fort Lauderdale, 36% RMSE. So the model is like calibrating really well. Right now, the 18.6% is like exceptional. And we are paving the way for the models used in multiple applications. Moving on to how the model is performing for transit assignment. Right now, this is like the daily ridership for the different routes. We also included NAU. We are a little short on NAU, like the campus shuttle assignment, ridership, but overall, we are replicating the ridership patterns very well. We are still playing with some transfer parameters within the mode choice model structure, and hope to improve upon this in the next month or so. So the potential model applications, there's like a wide variety of applications. Long range planning, it's much better with a robust mode choice model, and traffic impact analysis, because it's the trip attraction rate is based on like trip generation manual. Traffic impact analysis will be much better. Transit planning policy, it's completely new. Multimodal planning is a new feature. Pavement management can be accomplished through the assignment features, and also since truck volumes are included in this, it can provide inputs to the pavement management applications that you have, either through GIS or through standalone applications. We will be investigating how the model can be used for intersection design in the future. The key to this is the model's ability to replicate turning movement volumes. So given this, where we are today, and the next steps are to complete the calibration, including the mode choice calibration in the next few weeks. We hope to complete it by third week of October, and documentation is in progress, and around fourth week of October is when we anticipate to have the documentation, and conduct a training session in first week of November. We do hope this model is robust, and you'll be able to use it for a wide variety of planning applications in the future. So with that, I'll leave it open to any questions you may have, or Dave, if you want to answer any questions.
Yeah, Ravi, Mr. Chair, I'm gonna thank Ravi, and we do have another group that has a presentation, and I think we can squeeze it in. So Ravi, thank you very much. I'm very pleased with the progress that we've made and how well the model is performing, and expect that we'll have you'll be impressed with the calibration reports that we provide you in November, and look forward to TAC endorsement at that time. So again, Ravi, thank you. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll move forward then with the ADOT item 3G ADOT data reporting. And Dave, you'll be the lead on this one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to quickly turn this over to Sage Donaldson from ADOT. This is an overview of functional classification, road mileage, and traffic data collection, all tied to the HPMS program. So Sage, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. Yeah, thank you so much for having us here. I think we're going to go ahead and just kind of get into our presentation here real quick today. We're going to talk about the functional class rebalancing status that happened last year. We're going to kind of just go over the AZGO change request tool and the validation of road ownership tool. And then we're going to get into the statewide traffic count program, and how that is going to affect MetroPlan here for you guys. So Adam, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you.
Yeah, thanks. As many of you will recall, over the last several years, ADOT was working on a project to reassess the functional classification of roads throughout the state. And that process wrapped up a little bit ago, and we just wanted to kind of bring that back to you as the results of that. and also to thank you for your input. We're now much closer to being in the meeting the target ranges of FHWA. If you want to go see the new functional classification, we've got this link, this map, online map. You can see what the prior classification was and the new functional classification. And as well, this website here, Sage has been working on this a lot, and it's really great. It's got a lot of information about all the HPMS reporting items, but it's a great resource to look for functional classification as well. For changing the functional classification, if you have a request that you'd like to make going forward, ADOT's changing the process to hopefully streamline it a little bit more. It's going to be using this AZGO application. And the link here is up at the top, and we'll make sure to send that out to everybody as well. In order to use the application, you will have to get a AZGO user account, and we provide the link down there at the bottom to get that. It's just a map. You open it up and you select the road segment, and you just fill out a form essentially that allows you to input the justification for your request. The form will kind of walk through it just a little bit. It gives you the information on the road, and then you just fill out this form of what the functional classification should be and the request criteria. You can upload documents, and then it automatically will notify people who need to know about the functional classification change. It'll send an email out to everybody, and you can in that email you can click a link, and it'll take you to see the status of your request. All right, well, Sage, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you for the discussion on certified public mileage.
Yeah, and so this next part of the AZGO tool, because it is a multifaceted tool, is in road validation or roadway ownership validation. And so part of that is the certified public mileage. And so certified public mileage is the sum of all public roads in the state that are passable by a standard passenger car, being something like your Toyota Corolla or around that kind of sedan range, not restricted by any gates or barriers, has to be completely publicly accessible and includes BIA lands. If you are interested in kind of delving into more about certified public mileage or just kind of learning more of the details surrounding it, there is a link here to the certified public mileage story map that ADOT put out. It is also on that website that Adam talked about in a few slides ago, as well as there's a ton of other really good story maps and information on there. You can always go and read through it on that. So then leading into the ownership and maintainership part, ADOT reports ownership and maintainership as a part of HPMS. And so recently we've implemented these Arnold requirements that have unified the GIS to include locally and some privately owned roadways. And this has really increased our certified public mileage throughout the state. And so this other part of the AZGO tool will allow you to go through and also indicate whether or not a road should be counted in those certified public mileage. So I'm going to pass it back off to you, Adam, to kind of walk through that part of the tool real quick.
Yeah, the tool is essentially the same. You'll just select between if you're viewing functional classification and ownership or maintainership, and you'll do the same thing. You can request a change. There's a button for that, and it'll walk you through the form for letting you indicate to ADOT whether or not the ownership is different than what is shown, or if you don't feel like the road should be included in certified public mileage. And again, it'll notify you the same way and send that email out. If anybody needs to be included in this automatic list of people that should be notified with any of these changes and is not included, please let us know. You can also just write down their email address here on the bottom, and they'll receive the email. But yeah, if you guys have any questions as you go through this process, reviewing your ownership or when you are submitting a request to change the functional classification, please don't hesitate to give us a call. We'd be more than happy to kind of walk you through the process. And with that, I think we'll go to the traffic portion.
This is Jonathan Samuelson. I'm going to jump in here right now. I think we're still kind of trying to go through this stuff very quickly. There are sort of these, I think our last slide will kind of summarize where we're asking for feedback and where we're presenting things for information only. But this traffic data coordination, this is a place where we're actually asking for your involvement, where we do need some feedback. So there's two components here. The first one is just on general addressing the AEDT needs for HPMS each year. You can see from this chart that there's still, 18, 19% of the state, of the FMPO region where there's no traffic record, and these are on functionally classified roads. This is after the functional classification rebalancing. So some of that gap may be due to the some additionally new federal aid roads that were not previously functionally classified. So we hope that we can kind of coordinate and perhaps influence your traffic count program that you guys implement every few years. That's the objective, at least. So I think this link here will take you to a web map that will show you precisely where those data gaps are. And then of course there's the FMPO MS2 soft site.
Yeah, and we can also, this map shows, segment level where exactly the counts are missing. And in some cases, it may not be that, FMPO didn't go out and collect a count. Maybe, the count location isn't being referenced properly. And we'd love to have that input with you as we show what segments are missing data and work with you on how to address, how to fill those gaps, whether it is adjusting your count program to include new locations based on functional classification changes, or how we reference those locations in our when we're going to report our traffic data.
That's perfect. I know, for Coconino County specifically, some of the places where we're not showing traffic count data is precisely as Adam just indicated. It's that the data isn't being loaded to MS2, although it is being collected. And we've been working with folks with Coconino County specifically in improving and providing some training and making sure that the counts do get loaded to MS2. So that's important. I think I'm going to just move on here to the next slide. Dave, jump in if you think something needs to be discussed or there's questions. Otherwise, we're going to just keep plowing forward here to the end. So I think this is just our last point. With this project that we're doing, the statewide traffic count management program, we're trying to take a big picture look at how we can improve traffic monitoring. And a lot of that is just better coordination between ADOT and local governments, better understanding of roles and responsibilities and where information is needed. All of that's wonderful. But I think there's two kind of important pieces here that affect Flagstaff specifically, and that's investigation into emerging technologies. One of them is the streetlight data conversation. That is an inevitability. We know that data is, it is viable. It doesn't replace traffic counting, but it is kind of a viable, at least a supplement to traffic counting efforts. And so I think there's more to talk about there, but this is kind of the specific thing here, this intersection sensor inventory. We are looking for places to tap into traffic counting that's going on the local network, off the state system, and the local network, where we can get continuous traffic counts. Continuous traffic counts are necessary in order for us to annualize the short-term counts, the regular 48-hour counts that typically get collected by laying tubes across the road. And so we're running a pilot. I think that's the second bullet point here, a pilot auto polling integration with MS2 data model. where we're doing this in Pima County, where we're getting some traffic signals, adaptive control traffic signals, and actually connecting them to the MS2 TCDS, and just populating counts there 365 days a year. In evaluating the opportunity to do that in other agencies, we do need to collect some information from local agencies. So we're asking that this link here be used to go, maybe I can go to the next slide, just to this online survey. These are a couple of high-level questions just to identify the number of intersections, whether or not it's adaptive control, whether or not it's set up to for collection of traffic count data as opposed to just detection. And then we'll follow up from these surveys and kind of dig in and try to inventory specific intersections. If we do a good job with our project, we'll be providing something of a recipe that can be used by you and by ADOT in doing infrastructure improvements, justifying infrastructure improvements like adaptive control traffic signal sensors, but also making sure that when those projects happen, that we're tapping in and making sure that we're taking any opportunity possible to connect the traffic counts coming off your signalized intersections, connect those to this MS2 system. And if we can do that in an automated way, it shouldn't present an additional burden on anybody. ADOT is eager to help with this, and the data is extremely valuable. I think next slide. Again, this is just some stuff about the auto polling process and the different types of intersection sensors that you might have in your agency. Just tell us what you have and we'll sort it out from there. Last slide. Okay, this is sort of kind of the cliff notes of, or the summary slide of everything that we've talked about thus far. I think, perhaps Dave, this is sort of the piece that can be sent out to local agencies or to this group after this meeting. But, review of your functional classification and roadway ownership information on the AZ Geo tool, that I think is probably relevant to the counties. It may not be as relevant to the city. However, it's certainly your opportunity to provide comments and to clean up and improve ADOT's database on road ownership. But if we don't hear from you, we're not going to come following up. That's just fine. The bullet point number 2, continue counting traffic data and share the data with MS2. I think that's already happening. We're confident it's going to continue in this region. Number 3, adjust local count programs to collect traffic at these additional, these places where we don't have anything. That is important, and we think that we can coordinate with you guys easily and make sure that that we're providing input on where those gaps are. That's something that we weren't in a position to provide in the past. And at this point, we do have a very nice map and even a tabular summary of where these data gaps are. And we think we're in a much better position to support and to inform your count programs. And lastly, this intersection sensor inventory, number 4 there. Those are kind of the 2 points where we do hope to have some clear coordination with you. Number 5 there, this is just kind of a more information is coming statement. We expect the statewide traffic count monitoring program to publish some very clear standards and recommendations on traffic monitoring. It's a great opportunity to make sure that there's good collaboration between ADOT and the regional and local governments. And we do expect to have more information that's shared with you perhaps in future TAC meetings. And I think,
Jonathan, thank you. Thank you to Adam. Thank you to Sage and Brittany. Appreciate, it was very impressive. You went through 4 slides without taking a breath. I thought that was epic. Unfortunately, I don't think we have time for questions, but I do have some handouts that you have shared with me and this presentation. We'll get this out to the group, and I'll be in touch to coordinate with you all to coordinate local actions, including those through MetroPlan. So thank you again. Mr. Chair.
thank you all for your presentations, and thank everybody for coming today. Do we have any quick questions that we can maybe get answered in the next minute before we hit 3:30? It doesn't look like it. So we'll go ahead and ask for any future agenda items.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. I just want to say to everybody, our next meeting is November 18th. Because of the Thanksgiving holiday, we combined the October and November meetings into one. So wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
Thank you for that, Jeff.
Nate, this is Ann. I have my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Ann. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Future agenda item that, and I believe Greg Mace is on the call here with NAU. Mountain Line and NAU would like to ask to put the McConnell Improvements Project on the agenda just for general update. The last time we presented this to this team was, I think, last February maybe, and the direction from TAC was proceed with doing a traffic statement and more traffic study feasibility. And so our team is about ready to finish that up, and we would have some findings for this group just to review and put into the mix of other projects in the region.
Okay, thanks, Ann. So we're going to move to closing business because we're over time now, and we'll adjourn. We'll adjourn this meeting at 3:33.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Everybody's time.